Friday.
Could two of the most infamous killers ever soon be headed toward freedom?
Lyle and Erik Menendez making new headlines.
Everyone has an opinion on them. Now, new interviews, breaking new details. 2020, Friday on ABC.
Welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and today I have an extra episode featuring JuJu Chang of ABC News' Nightline to discuss a very relevant case/subject, the Menendez Brothers. And this is ahead of the new 2020 special airing tonight, where JuJu has some major interviews. So first, just a bit about JuJu Chang. She's a multiple Emmy award-winning journalist and co-anchor of ABC News' Nightline. She is known for her amazing storytelling. She's covered pivotal events like the rise of violence against Asian Americans, global climate issues, mass shootings, and COVID-19. She's also reported on crucial social justice issues. And, I would say just hands down, she's a leading figure in broadcast journalism. I last interviewed her about her special on Ruby Franke. And wow, I loved talking to her about that. Her knowledge about some of these cases is so wonderful. So, if you've been listening to my podcast or watching my YouTube channel, you will know that I have been covering the Menendez brothers and a possibility of a resentencing or a new trial. And I would hope they get resentenced over a new trial. I cannot imagine them going through that a third time. But if that's the only option, then yeah, let's take it. But no, there's a lot going on. There was recently the family press conference that was held by 20 members of the family on each side, Kitty and Jose. It was pretty incredible. So JuJu and we talk about the case, we talk about the special tonight, and she says some really interesting things that I was not aware of. I'll let you guys listen, but just one thing to look out for. I didn't know this. She interviews George Gascon, the LA DA, and as you or most of you know, he's up for re-election on November 5th, but he is going to be making his own decision by October. And so by October, he's either going to come out and say, this is what I recommend should happen with this case, and then, it'll go to a judge, and the judge will make the final decision. But, yeah, he's going to be doing this now, anytime. And so I was like, wait, what? And then, yeah, hopefully on November 26th, the next hearing, they could possibly be free if that was Gascon's decision, a resentencing, and the judge agrees. So that's a lot. Think about it. After 35 years, these brothers could potentially walk free November 26th. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to play my interview with JuJu. And listen, if you are not up to speed on this case, and I guess the way I've been covering it, I would go back and listen to my interview with Hazel Thornton, the juror from the first trial, or some of the live streams I've done, because I get into some detail. So, okay, I'm going to stop rambling and play my interview with JuJu Chang.
I'm well, and you're in New York. I love it.
Yes, I am. The last time we spoke was about Ruby Franke. That was a great conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, this is another juicy one, that's for sure.
Oh, I am all over this, JuJu. I recently interviewed Hazel Thornton, who was a juror on the first trial, and she had so much, wonderful insight. So my listeners, my audience, they are well aware of everything that's going on. So I'm just going to jump right in and ask you some of the questions, that I'm wondering right now. George Gascon has been accused of doing this for re-election purposes, entertaining the habeas petition and the resentencing, though he claims that he has not. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I spent a lot of time talking to him last week in LA, and two things. One, he said something to me that his staff later told me he'd never said publicly before, which is that he does not believe that the Menendez brothers deserve to die in prison, and that this is all a part of his resentencing legacy, that during his term, he's let go of 300, offenders and resentence them based on real criteria, like are they rehabilitated, are they this, are they that? But the other part of it is it political? And I asked him that. Like, you're down 30 points in the polls, and people say this is a political move on your part. And he said, "Do you really think I'm conspiring with Netflix to do this?" And I chuckled. And then he said, "And frankly, I have an easier path to election without this, because people in LA right now are looking more for tough on crime, not let murderers out." But that said, there are other people, legal observers, people, his opponent, who think maybe, just getting your name in the headlines is helpful during re-election season. That said, I will bring it back to the Menendez family, who say to me, they don't want this to be political. They want this to be anything but political, that this should stand on the merits of the case that's being forward. I talked to Rosie O'Donnell. I talked to Mark Garagos. I talked to members of the family. I mean, it's really fascinating how obsessed society is right now with reframing and re-examining this case.
I so agree. And I'm so grateful that, because I'm under the belief that they should be released. I think that what they experienced is horrific. And I've said this ad nauseum. So many reasons why they should be believed based on their own testimony, broken down by statement analysts, deception analysts, and also just, God, Dr. Ann Burgess. She was one of the best witnesses, I think, that we could ever ask for, and as well as the family members' corroboration. So I guess with George Gascon, I'm grateful, but I do kind of think it has something to do with his reelection, because he's had this since 2023. His office has had this. Sure. And I know that it's busy, but did you ask him about that? Does he have anything to say about that?
Sure. I mean, his view is these cases take a long time. He also pointed out that there's disagreement within his own office. He said there are some people who still don't believe the Menendez brothers, and despite all the corroborating evidence, as you said, not only did the two cousins testify, but there's this new habeas corpus writ that you referred to. One has a letter from Erik that he wrote at the age of 18, just months before the murder, saying, "Dad, it's worse, Andy. I'm terrified. I can't sleep. Dad's going to come in the room," that kind of stuff that is in other kinds of sexual assault cases. Contemporaneous evidence like this, contemporaneous accounts where somebody confides in somebody about the rape, can hold up in a court of law, right? So not only did he testify to that in the first trial, where it was hung jury, and you interviewed that juror, the second trial, it was all excluded, right? And then the other thing is the Menudo band member who has come forward and said this. Now, the habeas ruling, I talked to Mark Garagos about it. They submitted it more than a year ago. But I think that the timing of this court date for the habeas is November 26th. It's the resentencing, which is in many ways more viable, that the DA, George Gascon, told me that he's going to make a decision on in October, which is soon.
Wow. Oh, I did not realize that. So the decision could be made in October, and then let's say he says, yes, they should be resentenced. They could be out by November 26th. Right?
Yes, and it's up to the judge. It's up to the judge. But the cousin told me, Karen Vandermolen, her mother was the 92-year-old woman, Joan, Kitty's sister, whose voice cracked at the press conference and said, "I believe that these boys were trying to escape inexplicable and unspeakable abuse." In fact, Karen tells me that Joan had been talking to the brothers weekly for years throughout the 3 decades of incarceration. These family members, this is the first time they've all stood together in a press conference, but they've been by the brothers' side throughout all of it, and it's part of what keeps them going. And, Rosie O'Donnell, who's an abuse survivor, she comes out saying that she was abused as a child. She has befriended Lyle in part over this bond. And she's visited them multiple times in San Diego in the prison that they're at. She's attests to Erik's artwork being on the walls, the murals on the walls in behind bars. They've both gotten degrees. They've worked with prison hospice care. They've helped dying prisoners. They've counseled other prisoners who are adult victims of sexual abuse. And they did all that with no hope of parole. They did all that in Rosie's view and in the DA's view too, as a testament to their character, right? And you know that if manslaughter had been an option for that second jury, they would have gotten 22, maybe 25 years max with a gun charge. 25 years, they've now been in prison for 35 years.
Yeah.
And so that is why this resentencing initiative that Gascon has been spearheading for his entire term is probably the more viable option.
I agree. I cannot imagine. I mean, listen, if the options are stay in jail or a third trial, obviously third trial. But I mean, can you imagine? I cannot. I think that would be the most painful, torturous thing ever. But
Right.
I do remember Rosie speaking out in 2023 after the Menendez Menudo doc came out. And I remember watching that and my jaw was just on the ground. And I think that Robert Rand has done an incredible job with, I mean, I don't think people realize he is the one that really uncovered this stuff. It's his journalism. So look at what journalists can do. It's such an amazing thing.
Yeah, and it's so funny because there's some conspiracy theories that, they're like, well, how did Robert Rand get both, pieces of thing? And I said that to George Geragos. I was like, how did Robert Rand get both these? And I interviewed Robert Rand, by the way, at length. And we stood out in front of that house in Beverly Hills, which has turned into a tourist designation. I mean, there's literally like a Hollywood tour bus that came by as we were standing there. But anyway, it's fascinating. And Geragos said, if you're a good investigator, you get the evidence. And that's what he says Rand did. And the letter has been around since 2016. He just found the original in Andy Cano's bedroom.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes,
it's been out there for a while.
He said that Marta let him go through everything, and he's like, awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Who would? I mean, and I can't imagine the feeling he must have had upon finding that. He must have been like, oh my gosh,
amazed. He said he found it within 15 minutes. But the other thing is, tonight's 2020 with Barbara Walters. She reads from that letter from 2017. She had that letter in 2016, and she read from it, and she read the passage that I just paraphrased to you. This evidence, all of this corroboration has been out there for a long time, as you know, from the very first trial. And so this is really about a whole new generation and a whole newly informed older generation taking another look.
I so agree. Oh my gosh, I so agree. And it's interesting because we haven't really seen much negative press until yesterday when I believe it was an uncle. It was just revealed that he believes that they should remain in jail. And I think his lawyer was on News Nation, right? Did you see that last night?
I didn't, but this uncle is in tonight's 2020, Brian Anderson. He has been steadfast for 35 years that he doesn't believe that the abuse happened. He does not want to believe it. He says that he believes the brothers have been lying all this time, and he believes that the motive was greed. Now, what I will say to you is there are 20 plus, it's actually closer to 24, only 20 were at the press conference, but 24 family members have been in solidarity in belief of the brothers. And we have this one uncle, and maybe two uncles actually over the 35 years. So you really have to, this isn't just, I don't want to get into a false equivalency, right? It's like, let's look at the totality of evidence. Again, the kinds of evidence that holds up in courts of law when other rape victims come forward.
Yes. And, I've said, JuJu, they were separated for so long. And I feel like when there is a lie, as large as people want to believe that, if they believe that's a lie, that's a very big lie. And in 35 years, you would think that, hey, maybe the truth will come out, or one brother will turn on the other brother because they have no hopes of ever seeing each other again. The fact that Lyle ran support groups for sexual abuse survivors, and all they did was wait to see each other again, and their story never changed. I just, that blows my mind.
Their story really didn't change. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It never changed. And, I'm reading through these Diddy lawsuits. That's for another day. And I just want to be like, hey, Pam Bozanich. So men can be raped. I just want to throw that out there.
Right.
Right.
And again, a lot of that speaks to the Me Too movement, which really informs how trauma affects behavior, right? Victims stay silent. Survivors act out. Survivors, will whatever. But on top of that, the Catholic Church scandal, right? We've seen so many men come forward and convicted pedophile priests, right? And so this is like a completely evolved generation.
Yes, oh my gosh. Well, Juju, I cannot wait to watch the 2020 tonight. You've made me so excited. I always love speaking to you. I appreciate your time, and I'm praying and my fingers are crossed that there's some good news come October and November.
You're great. Well, and if you want more, we have a special on Hulu too. It's an Impact by Nightline that really breaks it down as well. So enjoy.
Yes. I saw Robert post about that. I'm all over that too.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
Thanks
amazing.
Again.
All right, be well. Thank you.
All right, you too. Bye. All right, that was JuJu Chang. I loved speaking with her. I always love speaking with her. She is such a great guest, and she has made me so excited to watch the special tonight on 2020 about the Menendez brothers. And I know I've been covering this case so much, but I swear I feel strongly. I feel like it's time for them to get released. So I'm all over it. All right, guys, thank you for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode. I'm Lauren Conlin.